This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome, listeners, to Postcards from the Edge. I'm your host, Amy Nelson, and with me this week is Mike Morrison from Metatreks. Mike, thank you for coming on Postcards.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. I have looked forward to getting on mic with you for some time.
I know it's been not a long time. This is our first podcast together, in part because you are just way too smart for me.
Oh, no. This is a treat for me. I've enjoyed listening to your podcasts, and just a treat for me to get to jump on mic with you. And thank you so much for inviting me aboard for Postcards.
Yeah. Now, this is the first time that you are on Postcards, so I want you to tell our listeners, in case they're not familiar, a little bit about yourself and your show, Metatreks.
I am the co-host of Metatreks, Trek FM show on Star Trek and philosophy, along with my co-host, Zachary Fruling. We talk about philosophy through the lens of Star Trek. It's a lot of fun. If you've never had an opportunity to listen, I encourage you to go back and give us a listen. I think you'll find it stimulating conversation. We cover textbook classroom philosophy. We cover Star Trek, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, some of the episodes that really have stuck with me, and I've been listening since you started every week. The last one you did was the season 1 of Discovery, Philosophical Ideas in season 1. That was a hoot. And I think you guys cheated because you usually only pick one episode and you're like, well, I'm going to pick 2 episodes combined. And
there was a lot of cheating going on in that one. And for that matter, doing that Essentials, we had a lot of requests for us to do an Essentials. That's one of our shticks that we do. We cover an entire season of Star Trek, and we've done at least half of the seasons of even the 7-season, like Next Generation, and we've done 3 or 4 seasons of DS9. I think we've completely gone through the catalog of the original series and Enterprise. So this is one of the things that we've done. And we had a lot of demand, a lot of requests for us to do an essential Trek philosophy for Discovery. And so we went back recently and did season 1. Zachary and I both were a little underwhelmed by season 1. I think Zachary a little bit more than I was. However, there was a lot of good philosophical themes kind of woven throughout that first season. But I have to say, season 2 is just killing it. Whatever they did to adjust things behind the scenes between these 2 seasons, I hope they continue because they're just killing it this season.
All right. So one of the ones that really stick with me is your episode when you talked about if you go through a transporter, are you really who you are? And that's going through my mind, especially now in Discovery. We've got, Culber, is he the same person? Obviously not. I mean, his molecules are put back. He looks the same. Or Tyler, Vogue. That episode really sticks in my mind. And as I watch it, I'm always referring back to that episode.
Yeah, when you think about identity over time, it's a really tricky thing, especially when you're dealing with things like transporters and alternate universes. And so you're literally taking these people apart molecule by molecule and reassembling them. So in essence, you have to kill them in order to transport them. And when you reassemble them, it's kind of like the ship of Theseus, this kind of thought experiment in philosophy. If you take a boat and you've replaced every part on that boat, is it still the same boat? And essentially that's what you're doing with the transporter. You're disassembling someone and reassembling them. And you have to ask the question, are they the same person? And you're right. In the case of, Colbert, you have to ask the question, is he the same person? I mean, the essence of who that character is exists within this body, but it's a clone. And obviously something's different. Something's changed. And we're kind of teased about that on screen, but you do have to ask the question, is he the same person? I'm not sure Stamets is going to like the answer, but, there's something different there.
Yeah. Well, we aren't here to talk about Metatreks, although I definitely could the whole hour. But today we're going to discuss the fan response to Season 2, Episode 7, Light and Shadows. Now, if you would like to participate and share your response, please post your comments on the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Type Babel, Babel, into the search field, and it will come right up. And at the time of this recording, I really am not kidding about this. There have been 246 comments this week, which compared to last week is a 47% increase.
47.
Trust the math. I couldn't have done that any better. To have 47 come up and on a week where math was referenced again, I am in heaven.
I've not been keeping score, but is that a record? I could not believe the fan response and the comments that were coming in on this one. It was incredible.
Well, we did have a week that was 252, so just shy. So that's so far the second most commented thread so far.
Wow.
And it was predicted because people are like, oh, well, we'll get the comments when Spock arrives. And we have Spock here now in the picture. So.
Well, and I have to say for me, it was the teaser for the next episode that really got me going. I mean, I'm just sitting there with the remote in my hand going, Talos freaking 4.
Now, I'm not quite as familiar. I've seen all the episodes, but it just doesn't stick. And so I kept thinking, Talos 4, what's Talos 4? I'm like, I know it's important. And then when I saw the heads, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So that was great.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Mike, what did you think of this week's episode?
I'd have to say that it's the strongest episode yet. I said a moment ago, I think this whole season has just been incredible. And this particular episode was incredibly strong. Philosophically, it was strong. I think the writing was incredible. The acting was amazing. I love these little teases that they're kind of weaving in that really, for me, as a fan of Star Trek, it really baits me and makes me want to watch subsequent episodes because, what's Giorgio talking about? What's this guy know about Michael Burnham's family? And, the conversation that takes place between Michael and Amanda. There were some nuances to that conversation that I found very interesting. Certainly, Sarek's involvement in all of this. I'm hooked.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting. I think it was 2 weeks ago, and there was just so many storylines. And we were talking about the A plot, the B, the C, the D, and it was like so much. But this one, it seemed just as heavy in the multiple plots, but it was seamless. Yeah.
And is it me, or does Christopher Pike feel like he just belongs? He definitely has entered my all-time favorite captains list, and he just feels so attached to this series and to Trek lore. Anson Mount has done an amazing job bringing this character to life. The writing for the character is awesome. I just feel like he was always there, should have always been there, rather than just kind of a throwaway leftover from the original pilot back in the day.
I know. He fits in, and the way that they are writing him like the perfect captain. And I love Anson Mount's portrayal of him. And I don't even want to think about next season when we don't have him. Oh,
I really feel as though, and this may get some response from fans because Enterprise isn't necessarily the most popular of the series, but I really get a feel from him that he is a lot like Captain Archer, especially in the first couple of seasons of Enterprise. There is this kind of wide-eyed enthusiasm that he has, and he's so grounded, yet he's not afraid to make the hard calls and bend the rules and do what's got to be done. There's a real sense of there's a real existential nature about him that I find appealing.
Yeah, his optimism and willing to, his curiosity to go out and explore does remind me a lot of Archer in the first 2 seasons for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get to what the fans had to say. So, Mike, why don't you start us off?
Certainly. So we start off with a response from Brian Yates, who said, "Another well done episode. The time shadows. Sea sounds cooler with time in front. Reminds me of the multiple datas in We'll Always Have Paris. Pike's plasma burn may have been inspired by Spock's move in the Galileo 7. I love that. Loved Pike's comment to Tyler, the chair outranks the badge. That's one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, and the flipping of the badge back and forth, so good. They're doing really just a great job in interjecting these little tiny bits of humor and, just sort of the back and forth between the characters.
I like the tension that exists at the beginning of the episode and how their experience really causes them to reevaluate one another, and they find some common ground. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops over the next several episodes.
Yeah. Ria Papagiorgio says, Amy Nelson, I think we set a new record for comments this week. Well, we were close. And she says, trust the math. People know how to get on the show by commenting on math. She continues, where do you even start here? 2 hot men in a shuttle in a temporal vortex. Squeal! And if that's not enough, some wonderful flashbacks of Spock and Burnham as children, this time getting along and connecting with each other, a glimpse of their brother-sister bond. OMG, Leland is one scumbag mother-father. Thank you for not swearing. I mean, he puts Cardassians to shame. There are 4 lights. Could Ariam be the Red Angel? She was one of the few possibilities that wasn't suggested last week. Or will she wreak havoc Data style? Either way, I'm so excited to learn about her character. Talos 4, will we see Vina? Is it actually the events to come that lead to General Order 7? Is the Red Angel but an illusion? Tune in next week for another exciting installment of Star Trek Discovery. Well, Ria, thank you so much for your comments. And wow, lots of questions there.
Ria is asking all the right questions, too.
Yes. So refresh my memory. Who is Vina?
Vina is the character in the original pilot who is trapped on Talos 4. She is the female that they present to Pike.
Okay.
The Eve to his Adam.
Okay. All right. Then, yes, that would be interesting to see.
Brian Sherman commented, time anomalies have been done to death in Trek. Reused, reworked, redundant. But this was fantastic. The time stutters, future tech, Vulcan, Spock, and my beloved Empress, who is so deserving of her own show. Yes, she is.
Yeah, I like that you say time stutters because that's what it felt like. They did such a great job with those special effects.
It's hard to take these concepts that have become so familiar to Trek fans and redo them. You kind of run out of your little bag of tropes, and you kind of have to go back and pull old ideas out. And sometimes they do them in fresh new ways, and sometimes they fall flat. But I think Brian's right. They really did this wonderfully, and it was different. It was unique. I think they knocked it out of the park.
Daniel Murdoch writes, fantastic episode. I love getting to know Amanda so much more than the dutiful Vulcan wife. In one scene, she added layers and dimension to her character. Kudos to both the writers and actress for bringing her more to life. There were quite a few comments about Amanda. So yeah, I thought she was great and really brought so much more to her character.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Christopher Littlefield comments, I think this is my favorite episode in season 2 thus far. There's a really clear sense of direction, and I was at the edge of my seat the whole time. Me too. I think they're hinting at Michael being the Red Angel. I still have hope that the preservers are somehow involved. Ethan Peck is dreamy. Can't wait to see more of virus-ridden Arium and eek the Telosians.
Yeah, Chris was on the edge, and we were talking about how the reference with the obelisks and sort of that with the Ba'ul might have been the preservers from TOS. So,
and I have to say, I've heard this fan theory that Michael could possibly be the Red Angel. I think there have been lots of hints thus far as to who the Red Angel could be, but unfortunately, most of them are coming from fans. I haven't seen a lot within the episodes themselves that hint either way. Probably that scene at the end of the episode with Arium maybe was really the first hint that I think there has been thus far, but lots of hints, but few of them are coming from Discovery.
Mm-hmm. Aaron Eichler writes, this was an amazing episode. I just finished watching it for the first time. I like the B story with the temporal rift, and that probe looked like Squids from The Matrix. The A story was awesome too. Michael was able to find Spock early in the episode, and we got to see some time with them together. I like that they're going to Talos 4 in the next episode. Also, we find out who is responsible for Burnham's parents' death. All in all, an awesome show.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I like the Squid too. When they were talking about it going forward in time and then somebody sending it back, my mind immediately went to the Borg. That's just me. But definitely a great visual and an interesting twist there in the story. Michael Richards says, holy cow, too much to think about. I have to watch again tomorrow, and also The Cage or The Menagerie. Probably The Cage, since The Menagerie hasn't happened yet. Best line, I know the feeling. That was a great line.
Yeah, so I'm sure The Cage for sure and The Menagerie definitely will be getting a lot of rewatches this week.
I hope so, because those are both, even in and of themselves, incredible classic episodes that deserve to be rewatched over and over.
Yeah, they are very good. Christian Alonso writes, as a teacher of students with disabilities, I love this new connection to Spock. I've always felt a bond with him. Nimoy's raspy voice reminded me of my grandfather. He's a character that's always been a pillar of my life. Each week, I don't think they can wow me more. Each week, I am wowed anew. Yeah. And I too, as a teacher, recognize especially those learning disabilities. And I love just the nuance, just a simple line, and Spock is still intelligent, functional, and just sort of adds this more richer context to his character.
Yeah. How do they do that? That was such an interesting twist. It was a nuance that it didn't take away from the character in any way. It didn't affect the Leonard Nimoy Spock character in any way. If anything, it added a layer of depth that is just incredible. Sanjeev Gopal comments, another character-driven, thought-provoking episode. In season 1, I rarely watched an episode more than once, but this season, LOL, the episodes are so nuanced and interesting, I watch it more than twice. I am a big Anson Mount fan at this point. Loved it when he told Tyler that the chair trumps the badge. With this smirk on his face, classic. And I couldn't agree more. I said before that I've been watching these episodes back to back, and it really is worthy of that kind of viewing.
Yeah, and I've mentioned it before too. Like, this is the first time they'll watch an episode and immediately watch it again.
Yeah.
It's that good.
Yeah, for sure.
Chris Foster says, I absolutely love the scene between Amanda and Sarek in this shrine. It gave us such insight into their relationship. You could feel the angst between them when Amanda was saying aloud feelings and memories from the time when their children were young. Clearly, they wouldn't normally speak aloud of such difficult emotional issues, which is something many of us can empathize with and understand. Yeah, that discussion between Amanda and Sarek was so deep, and the connection that the actors have, the chemistry also really sold the whole conversation.
I love the way that she respectfully reminded him that she was his wife, his partner.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I thought that there was something really strong. It added strength to her character that I don't think we've ever seen before in the few little peppered opportunities we've had to see this character. I really love the way that they brought that strength of character out in her, and she really showed herself to be an equal to this legendary character, Sarek. Rhys Morgan says, I liked it. I hope this episode is a good indication of how the show will continue. The A and B plot were both equally interesting to me this week. Michael finding Spock reveals more character backstory for both of them, as well as Amanda and Sarek. Also throwing in Vulcan customs that were unknown till now. Meanwhile, the time vortex plot with Pike and Tyler getting trapped is well used, revealing traits and quirks about the both of them, giving us a clearer picture of their characters. The probe becoming one of the robots from the Matrix movie was strange and makes me think that when it infected Arium, she will somehow become the computer from the Calypso short track. I'm pretty sure it's the same voice. Michael setting course for Talos 4 made my geek sense tingle. Mine too.
It's interesting to see now the fans making connection to Calypso, because when I did the Postcards episode, it was hit and miss. And they're like, what is that? 1,000 years in the future, da, da, da. And there was some complaints about it. And now with this episode, making those connections and now starting to have predictions is so fun to see.
And I think we've seen them do that already a little bit, kind of call back to those short treks that they did during the lull between the seasons. And so I'm interested to see where they go with that as well.
Brando Calrissian writes, another great episode of Disco. I'm going to reserve judgment on Spock. Just yet, as he is in his current state, you don't really get a feel for how he's going to be played. However, I love the fleshing out of his backstory as a child. Section 31 has a whole fleet of ship. That's pretty cool and unexpected. But OMG Talos 4, I literally screamed out loud when I heard that. Another thought, I love the scenes between Pike and Tyler addressing the tension, and seeing them come to accept each other was great. Hearing Pike admit he's got something to prove for missing the war validated his instance for taking the lead on some of these away missions where usually Trek is just like, yep, all command staff leave for the random dangerous place, LOL. But I grew up with TOS, so I like that style too. Yeah, getting, and we've seen that Pike has this guilt, and was upset that he missed the war, and again, just proven in this episode as well.
Yeah, and I think there were collective screams around the Trekverse for sure when Michael set course for Talos 4. AJ Black says, this was a good one. I enjoyed it. At long bloody last, the search for Spock is over, and it's already doing the show the world of good that the plot is kicking into gear there. Lots of little bits and bobs that made me go, ooh, particularly the final planet reveal, because I did not expect them to be going there. Less impressive was the forced Pike Ash stuff. The whole time rift mission was enjoyable. The tentacled probe was great, but the dialogue very much labors, and the development between these two when it could have been more deftly accomplished. But yeah, good stuff. The kind of punchy, serialized disco the season thus far has struggled to deliver.
So some positives and negatives there, Tony.
For sure.
But I did not expect to see Talos 4 at all. So I love, again, that Discovery, especially this season, is throwing us these amazing reveals, and how they keep it under wraps is beyond me. Because it seemed like season 1, everyone was just, oh, I predicted that.
Yeah. And it's so ingrained in the lore of Captain Pike. I wasn't expecting it, but when they did it, it was like, again, collective screams, I think, that they were going there. So I'm excited to see what happens.
Nicholas Anastasio writes, another episode becomes my favorite so far. I've heard this a lot. He continues, it's amazing to tune in week after week and see the bar constantly rise. I don't know if this is coincidence, but the style and tone of the series shifted slightly since the new producer lineup last week. It's subtle but noticeable. The intensity is there, but there is less freneticism. The constant twists have given way a little to make room for steadiness and moments that allow the characters to advance the story. Mind you, I already adored season 2 before. Now I just think it's genuinely powerful. This episode tapped into everything that is at the essence of Star Trek. Themes, story tropes, sci-fi concepts. It has it all. Faithfully, tastefully, and artfully executed. I feel like I'm watching a new chapter being written in the history of Star Trek's most soulful character, something I did not think possible. I feel like this chapter is not only rich and interesting unto itself, but also enriching of the whole. I have no idea how, but I'm fairly certain Section 31 is headed for a major snafu that will force them underground. I believe this is an active part of the story we're told. And I have no idea who the Red Angel is, but almost every theory sounds potentially exciting. I'm still hedging my bets on Zora, with Burnham being a safer bet. But I love Chris's mention of Georgiou. Thanks for another superb hour of Star Trek, Mr. Kurtzman.
Nicholas, I agree with your Section 31 theory 110%. I had that same thought when they introduced Section 31. I think something's going to happen here that's going to force them underground. I'm right on board with you.
And Nick, stop using such big words. I'm just a math teacher. But it's so eloquent, so I just have to read it every time you post. Well, let's get to a segment I like to call Bits and Pieces, and we had quite a few in our thread. Mike, start us off.
Yeah, Justin Ozer. I love that they updated the opening credits to include a different view of the Red Angel. Also, it was the first episode since Battle of the Binary Stars not to have a previously on Star Trek Discovery at the beginning. I thought it worked really well not to have that and to instead have a few bits from previous episodes inserted into the story like flashbacks.
So, do you watch the opening credits?
I do.
Did you notice? Because Justin posted a picture and I'm not sure why I didn't pick that up because I watch him faithfully because I noticed even in season 1, a few things changed. And so to me, I just watch it as part of the show because that introduction is great and I love the music. So
I'm with you on the music for sure. And I've been a little more diligent about watching opening credits of shows because a lot more, especially in the streaming age that we live in, a lot more shows are doing interesting little nuances in those opening credits that kind of inform where the show's going. So I look sometimes for clues, especially when I know that they're doing it. So yeah, I enjoyed that as well.
Yeah. And they did not have it previously on Star Trek Discovery. So when it started, I say the words along with it and then they didn't say it. And I'm like, what's going on?
It was fun though. I like Justin, I enjoyed the little flashbacks within the episode that were relevant to what was going on. I think that there is some criticism maybe that it causes a break that is uncomfortable as you're viewing, but I think it's an interesting alternative to doing just a previously on at the beginning. So I enjoyed it myself.
Karen Trouplis writes, also, I notice we are getting more and more tactile buttons. There were some on the bridge last week and lots in the shuttles this week. And yeah, I did notice that last week. And then again this week where they're like flipping switches and pushing literal buttons, not just, like a flat screen.
Yeah, I definitely geek out over the tech in the episodes, and I enjoy the fact that these aren't just static buttons, that they're actually switches that need flipped and buttons that need pushed. And I think that visually it's interesting, and it gives a sense of connection to the world that we're living in now, to the world that they're portraying in Star Trek, and I love that.
And I almost think that the blend of the two, of the tactile pushing and then it makes it feel more TOS to me. And I think that was lacking a little bit in the first season.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Frosty Winnipeg says, there was some really nice editing in the show. Just watch around the 14:45 mark as we go from the shuttle flying to the engine room, and at 18:20 as we go from the engine room to Spock. Nicely done.
Yeah. So there, every week we always mention how amazing the special effects are and the editing and just the flow of it's really hitting on all cylinders.
Movie quality.
Yeah. Janessa Chiharda says, does anyone else find it not coincidental that this episode aired during the week of the anniversary of Leonard Nimoy's passing? Yes, I did notice that as well.
I did, and it was, I think, a fitting tribute. I think Spock was again portrayed in a wonderful way that added to Leonard Nimoy's portrayal of the character. I thought it was a fitting tribute to a brilliant actor and an amazing character. Dan McWilliams said, I have many questions about this huge area where the turbolifts on Discovery supposedly operate. Reminds me of the baggage handling in Toy Story 2. Is the ship that big between decks? Would love to see some official schematics drawn up so I can picture this properly.
Well, Mike, are you concerned about ship schematics?
I have to say that I'm torn here because I love that little scene. We never really have ever got to see the space between the decks. We've not got to see an external view of those turbo lifts flying around inside a ship. So I was really glad to get that. As a Star Trek nerd, I was completely geeking out over that. But it did seem very spacious in there, and it raised lots and lots of questions.
Oh my goodness. Some things I just don't even, it's not on my radar at all. And this is one of them.
Well, you can't see it here in my podcast studio. I have a schematic poster of the 1701, the original Enterprise. So I do enjoy looking at schematics and figuring out how it's all put together and how everything works. This raised lots of questions, but at the same time, I was just so happy to get that external view, even for the second and a half that was on screen.
Yeah. Well, let's get to some questions and concerns. We don't always read the positive. We do get to those. So, Mike, start us off.
Yeah, so Bill Sweet starts out, so when was General Order 7 instituted? Was it ever said or just implied it was right after the cage? So we could be leading up to an incident which makes the death penalty appropriate for going there, because that always seemed a bit extreme. That's a great question, and I had the same question watching it. So Jeffrey Harlan provides an answer here that says, here's my thought. We know that General Order 13 exists in 2233. Perhaps General Order 7 existed long before the cage, 2254, and it prescribed offenses for which a death penalty was warranted. Sometime after the cage, traveling to Talos 4 was added at Pike's recommendation, and by the menagerie, that was the only offense still remaining after further revisions. All we know is that it covered travel to Talos 4, and it's the only death penalty still on the books. Well, Ataz would know.
He would. Yep. I'm so glad that he commented. And I'm still a little unclear. General Order 7.
General Order 7 is that order prohibiting travel to Talos 4.
Okay. Oh, there's just so much to learn. So Grant Davis asks, I enjoyed the Vulcan family story in the episode. I'm really looking forward to seeing more interaction between Spock and Burnham. The thing I didn't like about this episode in the season so far is the portrayal of Section 31. I'm having a hard time rectifying the portrayal here with the one on DS9. What good is your top secret shadow organization if everyone knows who they are because they have badges on their own ships? Sebastian Pillon writes, I reckon they must do something so bad that they get officially shut down, but secretly remain active. So that's definitely been a concern this season. Oh, they have badges? That's not very secret, but I'm liking, Sebastian, what you said, that, yeah, something's got to happen that maybe they do go underground.
I think we're getting a backstory for Section 31, and I think it's going to inform a lot of the canon that we see for the original series, where we never really hear about Section 31. I think there's a taboo that was assigned to them after an incident that we're probably going to see here, perhaps in the second or maybe even the third or fourth season of Discovery. We'll see. But they definitely seem legitimate at this point, and we know that at some point in the future, from where we are in Discovery, that they are no longer a legitimate external organization, but rather an underground organization, and maybe we'll get that story. Mark Flessa asks, I really like the episode overall, but I can't get behind Amanda. In her admittedly few previous appearances in the franchise, she seemed to be a person of great grace, calm, and humility. How she has been portrayed in this season, she's a treacherous, demanding, hypocritical criminal. 1 second, she shields her illegal actions through invoking Surek's diplomatic immunity, and then the next implies that she's greater, better, more important than the office and position that gives her that protection. Highly illogical and immoral. Interesting. An interesting take.
Right. Yeah. So, Mark, I definitely see where you're coming from. And I think it's because we get to see more of her. I mean, think about the previous iterations where we see Amanda. Like, she maybe has, 10 lines between all iterations of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, okay, it seems to me that Vulcan is very patriotic. Not so much as the Klingon, but, and so I think in the portrayal of their relationship, like Sarek is the husband and that she is not as dominant. But I think in the relationship between them, like they are equal and she reminds him of that. And we happen to see that on screen. Because I've always felt like, especially like in the portrayals of Star Trek 09, like, and when Spock loses his mother, like she was super important. And Sarek, I think, validates that. And so I, in my mind, saw that they were on equal footing, but to the outside of the house walls, that it's going to be portrayed as a patriarch family.
Yeah, there's a tension here that exists in this character. This is a human woman who has embraced a culture and lifestyle that is driven by pure logic. And balancing that tension, I think, would be incredibly difficult. And I believe, as you said, outside the walls of their home, I think she is by his side, graceful and humble, but she is a strong postmodern woman. And I think that she is going to do what any woman would do, whatever it takes to protect her children and try to honor her husband as best she can, And so I see that tension that exists in the character. I'm not put off by it. I don't see it as immoral or hypocritical or anything like that, Mark. I do, however, see a tension that exists between this highly illogical human woman and the culture of logic that she's trying to embrace.
And mind you, we get that scene when they are by themselves. You know, it's their family. It's not out in public. Amanda is not criticizing him, you know, in front of strangers or other. It's a family unit time. So,
yeah.
All right. Mark Rodriguez, my negative Nelly, has written to us again. Love you, Mark. He says, how is it that Burnham and Giorgio have this long fight after the internal sensors were back online and no guards came? No force fields to stop her, no gas, no intruder suppression systems of any kind on an advanced ship like this one. Oh, and the shuttle bay force field is open, no way to stop and escape. Come on. If Giorgio disabled the other system, she would have said so, as she did about the internal sensors. So, questioning the escape scene there.
All valid complaints, I think. But she had to escape somehow. And I think we could probably retcon easily that Giorgio disabled systems and made that possible. She obviously had this plan worked out when she approached Michael with it. So I think it's an easy retcon for me to just kind of go in and say, okay, she disabled systems and she made this possible. She presented the plan to Michael. She put up a good front and then she got out of there. So it's an easy one for me, but I think these are all valid questions and criticisms. Sebastian Pillin just finished episode. I love Discovery, and this had lots of great moments, but perhaps felt a little disjointed. I reckon it will sit well when the season as a whole is rewatched. I really like Michael and Spock, actually love the themes of family. The House of Sarek, the bridge crew, the engineering gang, Michael and Mirror Jojo. It's fascinating. Niggles. Those 6 numbers come on. The coordinates to Talos 4 just happen to be a bearing from their current position? No. Only a galactic coordinate would make sense. I dislike also that wise Sarek puts Spock at harm, because why else would Section 31 want him except to help? It diminishes his character. Questions. Why is Mira Jojo so keen to help Michael? What does she gain from that? What is Ariam, an android, human augmented? I don't understand her, but I'm super excited to see her role just got bigger. I love how Discovery builds on this cast so much and look forward to more from Detmer and the boys at the back of the bridge. Those are great questions. I will say that I actually looked up Ariam, and officially she is listed as a human augment.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, so that at least that's the way it was at the beginning of the season. I should have probably looked it up prior to coming on today, but when I looked her character up at the beginning of the season, she is listed as an augmented human. So I find that fascinating.
Well, and I think with Giorgio, like why she would help, I think that's her long game to try and, take over Section 31. I mean, she may be the reason why Starfleet washes its hand and it goes underground, if she's the one who's controlling Section 31, which if you consider that there's going to be a show about it, that might be the direction that it's going. I think she definitely alluded that, by me doing this, it's going to help me. And we all know that she's all about herself right now.
Yeah, and she knows things. And so one of the many, many Red Angel fan theories is that the Red Angel is Giorgio. And honestly, at this juncture of the game, I think that one probably makes more sense than any of them. She knows things. And so how does she know them?
Yeah. And one thing that I noticed, Sebastian, which I do agree with you, is that why would Sarek trust Section 31? This quote, why else would Section 31 want him except to help? It diminishes his character. I do have to agree with you, and I didn't think of that, but I'm like, Sarek is so intelligent, and why would he choose to accept this unless he was just grasping at straws, and I can definitely understand that as a father.
I wrestled with that one as well. However, I think one thing that is easy for us to forget as fans is that in the Discovery universe that we're in right now, Section 31 is a legitimate arm of the Federation, and Sarek is a ambassador and a officer of the Federation. So he's naturally, I think, going to trust this legitimate arm of the Federation to do the right thing. I agree. For me, it niggles at me a little bit, but I think it's explainable if you forget that in this universe, Section 31's totally legit.
That is a great point. Yeah. Tim Robertson says, time for my rant. He wrote more, but I wanted to put it in this section because I got to bug Tim. Anyways, he says, I'll call this one the invaded by a foreign body / object plotline. Previously on Discovery, Voke gets sequenced into Ash Tyler using surgery and Klingon voodoo. Tilly gets impregnated by a fungi, #NotMay. Culber comes back to life using his mycelium network body and stuff from the cocoon. Saru gets infected by the glowing red thing, which causes his ganglia to fall out. Tyler gets infected with teeny tiny spy things in his hands. Arium gets a computer virus in her eye. Did I miss any? Taking bets on who the next one is to get infected. Do you think Spock gets infected too? I'm loving Discovery. It just keeps getting curiouser and curiouser. Now, how funny is that? And did you think about all those foreign body object plot lines?
Yes, I have. And I've asked the same question. Who's next?
Yeah.
But this is Star Trek, guys.
When you list it out, that's a lot.
It is.
Well, let's get to our final thoughts. I have one comment, Ray Leopard, that I wanted to read, and writes, watched the episode twice and my head exploded both times. Now I need to pick up the pieces and post a few of my thoughts. When it was announced that Disco would be a prequel, I questioned that choice. Like many other fans, I was eager to see what happened after Nemesis. Now I think it was a great choice. I am enjoying immensely the nostalgic revisiting of old Trek lore. I love how the creators ensure that we are not just repeating what happened before. We are now exploring things in a new and different ways that deepen the mythology of Trek. All the scenes on Vulcan were the highlight of this episode. Love seeing young Spock and Burnham interacting. The parts with Amanda, Sarek, Spock, and Burnham were some of the most emotional character building in all of Trek. Now that we are headed to Talos 4, boom, there goes my mind exploding again. That was a great final thought, and I don't even remember complaining about how come this is a prequel, because I know I did, because I too wanted to see what's happening after Nemesis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the Star Trek creators know that we are all eagerly awaiting a sequel, and I think that's why we're getting the Picard series. But I've enjoyed this. I enjoyed Enterprise for that reason, getting to go back before Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and getting to see the foundations of the Federation being laid, and I'm enjoying it.
So, Mike, how do you think the fans responded to this week's episode?
Well, the sheer volume of fan responses is incredible. I love the questions that you guys out there are asking. They're all great questions. You have, I think, legitimate critiques and lots of praise to heap on this episode, and for that matter, this second season of Discovery. I've enjoyed reading these responses.
Well, be sure to check out our complete Discovery coverage. Live from the Edge airs on Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, so you can watch Bruce and Brandy and ask questions live. And it will be released as a podcast on Saturday mornings. Mike, have you had a chance to join in on the live discussion?
I've not participated in the discussion, but I have listened and really enjoy it. It's kind of fun to sort of virtually get to watch an episode of Star Trek with, 100 fans and friends out there.
Yeah, I was able to join in last night. It's just so much fun. And that hour goes by so quick. And it really is difficult because there were some times I'm going to have to listen to the podcast where Shashank was on last night. And he was like, well, I have this theory, but I was too busy reading the chat that I missed it. And I was like, wait, what did you say?
That's me. I get so caught up in reading the chat. I don't ask questions. I have not participated. I just enjoy watching those comments come in real time. It's so much fun.
Yeah, you really have to be an expert multitasker, and I failed last night. Well, our commentary will be available as Tracks from the Edge with Mike and Max. And of course, you can catch the full analysis of the Edge main show with Patrick and myself. And to wrap up coverage, we're hoping to get some notes, which will probably come after season 2. And that is by our Chris Jones, and he links Discovery and the broader franchise. You can find all of these in the main feed for The Edge and in the Trek.fm master feed. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Discovery, and the best place to do that is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook, where I will collect your feedback for Postcards from the Edge. You can also find us on Twitter at TrekFM or send us email using the contact form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select the Edge. That will come right to me. So, Mike, where can people find you on the interwebs? And why don't you tell our listeners about your exciting book?
Well, thank you. Thank you. Always you can catch me in the Babel Conference. I'm on Facebook. That's where I'm most active. Would love to connect with other Star Trek fans there. I'm on Twitter, cmichael1701, at cmichael1701 is my Twitter handle. I'm also getting a little bit more active over on Instagram. My handle there is cmichael1701. Yeah, thank you, Amy, for asking about the book. I am so excited about this. We are just getting it sent off to formatting. I never dreamed there was so much that goes into bringing a book to market, but this has been such a fun adventure. The book is a wonderful time travel story. On the eve of her 13th birthday, Hannah Goodhart finds a small object of mythological origins, and so suddenly she finds herself, along with her 5 friends, Lily, Annie, Morgan, Sam, and Sean. They're thrust into a portal, and they begin an adventure that'll take them on this cat and mouse chase through historical moments in time as well as other worlds. And their only hope of finding their way back home is to track down a time-traveling thief from another world and return this mysterious object to its rightful custodian, known to them only as the Guardian. It's being published by Fox Press. It's due out October 1st, everywhere books are sold. So really excited about that.
Yeah. And this story was inspired by your own daughter, right?
Yeah. So I had just finished a short story project in 2015 for the anthology that they were doing for the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, and I was reading the story to my daughter at the time, and this was really the first time that she saw me actually getting into a writing project. It's something that I've loved to do my whole life, and this was really the first time getting back into this writing project. Christopher Jones actually helped edit that project and really affirmed that I had the chops to write a good story. And I'm going through this with my daughter, and she comes over in my podcast studio. She kisses my cheek and she says, "Daddy," she said, "you get so much joy out of this. No matter what happens, please keep writing." And I started Hannah Goodhart a week later.
Oh my gosh.
How can you say no to that?
Yeah. Oh, and your daughters are just so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you so much. She inspires me, and she's got a good heart,
yes.
And that's the good heart I think informs the character, but it also says something. I wanted to write a story for my daughter that said, and for her friends for that matter, that said, character counts, and there are a lot of crazy things going on in the world, and whether you think it's your responsibility or not, take responsibility and do what you can to make a difference. And that's really at the heart of this story, Hannah Goodhart and the Guardian of Time. And I'm so excited to bring it to market. It's been quite an adventure.
Yeah, well, I am looking forward to reading it, and I'm just so excited. I know a real life author.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, you can find me here on the network where I co-host The Edge Main Show with Patrick Devlin. I also host Earl Grey with Richard Marquez and Justin Ozer, and that's about my favorite, Next Generation. You can also find me on the Fandom Podcast Network co-hosting Discoville, where we discuss the Orville and Discovery with my good friends Haley Stoddart, Kyle Wagner, and Kevin Reitzel. You can find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place is on the Babel Conference. So, Mike, are you watching the Orville at all?
I am, and I love it. I really do. I wasn't crazy about it the first couple of episodes that I watched in season 1, but I've really gotten into it. And I have to say, these last 2 episodes have been really intense. They've been great.
Oh my gosh, yes. I saw the comparison to Best of Both Worlds, and I was like, oh!
Yes, yes.
So good, so good.
Seth MacFarlane is killing it. And you can really see his own personal love of Star Trek just woven into these episodes. It's been fun to watch.
I know. That's why I love it. I tweeted at him and just was thanking him. He didn't like it yet, but that's okay.
Well, he's a busy guy.
Yeah. Well, if you'd like to help us keep all our shows going and even become an associate producer, visit patreon.com/TrekFM for all the details. And I would like to thank our current associate producers. They are Norman Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, Cornelia Reutner, Ryan Mallett, Chris Trebuzio, and Brian Maloche. Thank you for supporting Trek FM and especially The Edge. Well, Mike, it has just been an honor having you here on Postcards. Thank you so, so much.
Thanks. It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed the time with you, Amy.
So join us next week for another episode of Postcards from The Edge. Hailing frequencies open.